Clear Voices of Hope is a powerful collection of voices from For the Love of Cups, Clear Pathways program, dedicated to raising awareness about the realities of dense breast tissue and breast cancer. Through honest conversations and personal stories, we amplify the voices of women who have faced these challenges firsthand, sharing their journeys, fears, triumphs, and lessons learned along the way. Each episode brings you closer to the lived experiences of survivors, advocates, and caregivers, while also featuring leading experts in breast health and women's health. Together, we break down the barriers, provide vital education, and empower listeners to make informed decisions about their own breast health. Whether you're navigating your own diagnosis, supporting a loved one, or passionate about women's health equity, Clear Voices of Hope is your source for real stories, reliable information, and a supportive community. Join us as we shine a light on the path to early detection, better care, and hope for every woman. Welcome back to Clear Voices of Hope. I'm Lisa Malia, and today I'm sitting down with Jennifer Parker. I am so excited to introduce you to her today. She has one of the most remarkable stories I have had the opportunity to lean into, and just an extraordinary woman, and so grateful to have her in my presence and to get to know her and to get to dive into this wealth of experience and wisdom that she has to offer. I have no idea how long this episode is going to be, because I feel like I could sit down with her for a very long time and just really enjoy this conversation. So I'm going to encourage you to grab a cup of tea or go for a nice long ride and get some peace to yourself so that you can really dive in and just enjoy learning from Jennifer today. She's a public speaker, a 35-year healthcare veteran, former laboratory director, and owner of nationally publicated Southern Sparkle Florals. Jennifer brings both professional excellence and deep personal experience to every stage she steps onto. Stage 4 breast cancer survivor and heart transplant recipient, whose extraordinary journey through illness, advocacy, and recovery has positioned her as a powerful voice for compassionate, human-centered healthcare. On July 13th, 2023, she received a new heart, and less than a year later, she was winning gold medals as the Tennessee Senior Olympics and silver medal at the Transplant Games of America in honor of her donor. A proud ambassador for Legacy of Hope, Alabama, Jennifer speaks to inspire audiences to become organ donors, advocate for themselves in healthcare. She shows up to every room with 3 things she believes are at the heart of every act of advocacy: clarity, courage, and love. So you can see why I'm so excited to sit down with Jennifer today. This is just going to be one to really, really let your heart sink into. Jennifer, I'm so excited to welcome you to Clear Voices of Hope and have this opportunity to speak with you. I'd love to just give you a chance to introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about where you're at today.
Hello, thank you so much, Lisa, for those kind words. My name is Jennifer Parker, and I am a mother, a grandmother, a wife, and love to travel, love to cruise. Not so much since I've had my heart transplant, but I love to travel. I would like to start with my story by telling you the memory that I had when I was first told, you may not be able to go home until you receive a heart. And I was sitting in the doctor's office at that time, and just to hear that was the first thing that crossed my mind was, so you're telling me that someone has to die in order for me to live. And that was very hard for me to take. But my story doesn't start there. It starts in 2005, the summer that my daughter was about to go to college, my oldest daughter. We were excited about that. We were getting prepared for all those things. It was a busy year. She was graduating, doing all the things that you do before graduation, and my youngest daughter was doing competitive cheerleading, and so I was 3 months behind on getting my physical. So I tried to make an appointment. I called. They said it's going to be September before they could get me. And something told me, don't try somewhere else. Just don't do that. Don't wait another 2 months. And so I called my family doctor. He was able to get me in the next Monday, which was perfect because Tuesday we were leaving to go to orientation and registration at my daughter's college.
Wow.
Yeah, doing my breast exam, he found a lump. He wanted me to, of course, have a diagnostic mammogram as soon as I could. And I told him it's going to have to wait till Thursday because we're leaving for Murfreesboro tomorrow. So I waited. I told my husband, we didn't tell anyone else. I went and had the mammogram, and sure enough, there was a mass. They immediately let me talk to the nurse who was going to schedule an appointment for a surgeon. I only knew one surgeon that I had any contact with. He did my husband's surgery years before, and we liked him, so we went with him. He was able to get me in the next day, which was Friday, and yes, and so we talked and we got there, and one of the questions that I asked him was if he could do a frozen section, and he said yes. And with the frozen section, instead of doing the biopsy and waiting on the results, the pathologist could get the mass as soon as he had taken it out. He could look at it and tell whether it's benign or malignant. I don't know if they still do that. That was over 20 years ago. And he agreed to it, and he was able to do my surgery on Monday. So everything went fast. It was, good. I was really glad for that. But before we left, yeah,
amazing. I'm just so I can follow this. So on that Friday with the first surgeon, was that a biopsy only, and then the next surgery on the Monday? Did you have a lumpectomy or mastectomy, or?
It was the surgeon. Now the radiology team does the biopsies. Then the surgeon was the one who did the biopsy, and so he did the biopsy, and we agreed that if it was malignant, I would have a mastectomy. So he did the mastectomy the same time he did the biopsy. And so when I woke up from surgery, it's like, asked my husband, was it cancer? And he said yes. So we went from there. But one of the things that doctor, like I said, we only had, we had one surgery with him between the two of us. But before we left the room, he asked me if I could he said, can I show you something? And I said, sure. He was older than I was. He was probably 20, maybe even 30 years older than me. But he took out his Bible. He opened it up. He said, this is the center of the Bible. And it says, do not put your trust in man, put your trust in God. And so that made me feel really good, because I know that that's true. He didn't want me to depend on him to make me to trust in God. And that was an amazing thing in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so a month later is when I started chemo. It was also the time that my daughter was getting ready to go to college, because the first time, so she was getting ready to go to college. And so here we are. Probably the weekend before I had my first chemo, we were dropping off at college, and it was also the college that I had gone to 25 years before. I only went a year, but it was a couple of hours away from home, and that was good because she wanted to go to Florida. So I'm glad she would stay in Tennessee. But that was harder than the actual diagnosis, I promise you. And I think ladies can probably understand where I'm coming from when I say that, because it's kind of like the first one who gets the driver's license, all of that. Because my youngest daughter, she's an old soul, and I had no worries about her. But my oldest one, and she still is my most dependent one. So
it's hard,
it really
you raise
is.
them so that they can be independent in some way, but also it's
You let them do what they want to do. And because she wanted to go to Florida, we took her to Florida to visit the campus and all of that. But just in the back of your head, you think, please don't go to Florida, please don't go that far away. But
yeah, it's hard to let your energy expand that big and still feel like you desperately want to hold them and see them, but also need to let them go. Yeah, I can completely relate to that. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, but she also offered not to go off to college and stay. That way she could help me. But I was like, no, you're not. You're going. I had a huge church family and still do, but they helped a whole lot. So, but
Yeah.
we made it through that, made it through the chemotherapy without a whole lot of problems. And that went on through the end of the year, started in August. It went on through the end of the year. In January of the next year, I started radiation. And it was pretty aggressive because, of course, we found out later on, once they looked at the biopsy, and we found out that it was stage 4 because they had also taken out lymph nodes, and it was in my lymph nodes. So it was stage 4. But we made it through 16 years of graduations and weddings and babies and all of that, and I'm grateful for every moment. And
That is really remarkable.
yes,
At what point did you hear that it was stage 4?
wasn't immediately,
Yeah.
but they took out the lymph nodes. They did it all at the same time. But I guess it was when I went to the clinic to see my oncologist.
Okay. So sounds like it was before you started the chemo treatment.
Yes, yes, it was
Okay.
before then, and they did some
Wow.
other scans and all of that stuff. But it was stage 4.
That's remarkable. The numbers are never good when you hear information like that. And I think it's really, I'm just curious. I mean, I can't imagine. I don't want to take you all the way back there. I know that's not your whole story, but that's devastating news, right? And you're just about to start treatment. Your daughter's going off to college. Sounds like you still had another one at home.
Yeah.
And just wrapping your mind around that while also like deciding that you're gonna go in here and give this like everything you've got, because of course, you've got these gorgeous daughters and like you said, lots of graduations and things to look forward to. And I'm just wondering if you could just talk about that a little bit as you were going into treatments.
Yeah. With that,
Yeah.
when he told me, and I remember him saying the number of lymph nodes that were positive was like borderline. Do we do radiation or do we not do radiation? And I'm like, we do radiation, do everything you need to do to keep this, to get rid of this. But because I think we did have the internet back then, and you can start looking up stuff and looking at the percentages, and it was like 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at in 2025, it was 5
Yeah, I
years.
think they're still saying that. Yeah.
And I would, of course, I asked my doctor about it, and he said he never gives numbers. He doesn't like to do that, which that was a good thing because I beat the odds by several years.
Yeah.
So yeah, but my
Yeah.
treatment everything went fine, and I went back to work in April of the following year. And while I was, of course, before I was diagnosed, I was working on my master's in education, and I finished it. I was able to graduate that December, and I didn't want to march, but my husband and my daughter wanted me to, and so I did.
Of course they did. Yeah.
But everything was fine. And then,
That's amazing. That's truly remarkable. I mean, and it sounds like like you said, you wanted to use everything at your disposal, the radiation and the chemo, plus your family and your faith to get you through this. And, your everything that was driving you in life with your education and what you had to still accomplish. I think that just speaks volumes to how you got to this moment today, and the advocacy that you do. Because we haven't even gotten to that yet, which we will. But yeah, just bridging that.
and I tried to take care of myself. I tried to eat right because my mom was my mentor as far as being healthy and doing. She had surgery on her back when she was 44, and she started walking, and she was in this little group that they walked like 10 miles every day. They would walk around the mall, and they had mapped it out to where it was 10 miles a day. And she was in her 40s, and she juiced and she did this, and she was always in good shape. And so when that happened to me, of course, I've never been overweight before, and it was just like, I need to do more. I need to do more to stay healthy, to not, get do what I can do to prevent some of the things, the illnesses that I possibly could have had. And I think that helped me with my heart transplant when I had my heart transplant. But so
Yeah.
in 2000 in 2021, because my daughter is an event planner, and she had a bride once that like aunt was supposed to do the flowers and they couldn't do them, and she's like, let me see what my mom can do. And so I started doing flowers. I had never had any inkling, and my sister was always really good at doing, arrangements with silk flowers, and I'm like, how do you do that? Well, when she asked me to do these flowers, it was just for the reception. I got on YouTube and I learned, and I knew someone that I had helped her with the wedding. And one of the ladies, she lived in Memphis, and she did a great job. I loved her style. So she had a class. I took class with her. I took classes online. I learned how to do flowers. And I wound up having my business for 6 years. And the week that I went in the hospital, when I thought I was going for a clinic visit, but we'll get to that later. But I had two weddings the next weekend. I had two, and I had already had it lined out to where I was going to be in one city, and my niece who was working for me was going to be in another with her team, and I was going to have my team in Nashville. And it all came together. My family.
That is like such a joyful part of this whole story. Like, who would have thought suddenly you're running a floral business? And
Yes, I'm running a floral business in two weddings in one weekend, and you talking about being stressed about I can't go home. That was stressful. But my family, I was calling people left and right. Just, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? So I was doing that in house. But anyway, I'll go back to.
I love this though. I mean, you obviously are very talented and artistic. That who knew, right? You're like, wow, these are actually really beautiful. Turns out I'm really good at this, and people saw that too.
Yeah. And so in 2021, we had when I say we had, it's like, because I didn't do all the flowers for my daughter's weddings. I was on her vendor list, so if they wanted to pick me, they would. So I was doing the flowers for a wedding that she had in Nashville. It was at the African American Museum. It was the first wedding that they had, because it's a fairly new place. It was the first wedding that they had. It was in April. It was the week that they opened COVID back up. And Nashville is already crazy.
Wow.
On a normal day. But when you've been in restrictions and not able to do anything, it took us like 45 minutes to get zero point 0.3 miles. We got the closest Airbnb we could to the venue, and we still was, But anyway, it was so hectic. It was like you had to literally walk a mile inside the building to get to the front. They didn't block off the front doors where we could use the front doors, which was just steps from the street. We had to go through this whole tunnel-like thing. But my point in telling you that is that in that same year in September, I would be 59 and a half. And I decided after that wedding that I'm going to retire at 59 and a half, and I'm going to do this because this, as crazy as this weekend has been, this is what I just want to do this. I don't want to work my leadership healthcare job anymore. I just want to do flowers. So
Oh my gosh.
I did that. And that was in September.
That's incredible.
And I keep saying 3 months, but it wasn't. It was really close to 3 months. The end of November of that year is when I was diagnosed with chemotherapy-induced congestive heart failure. And it was in the winter, and it was horrible. It was just take your breath away, think you can't breathe. But I was diagnosed with that. In January of the next year, they gave me a life vest to wear. They said it usually 3 months, and then they take it off. Well, I had to wear mine for 6 months. And at the 6-month period, when they took it off, they immediately put a defibrillator in my heart.
Oh.
That's how bad it was. But The thing about it is that I didn't feel that bad.
Yeah, that's my question is, so what back in November, what tipped you or your care team off that you had this?
Yes, we were actually in Alabama. My daughter lives there, and her baby was what, 3 months, and we were going to let them, the new baby, going to let them have a break, and we have a fifth wheel parked in an RV lot, and we had him, and he was with us, and it was cold. It turned real cold. The heat was popping on, and I just start coughing. Just short of breath. I couldn't breathe, and I tried to wait. I just got up and came to the living room, and I just tried to wait as long as I could. And I was Googling, like, when my husband was still asleep, because I didn't tell him. I just left the bedroom and was Googling, like, which hospital opens or clinic opens at what time, because I didn't think I was going to have to go to the emergency room. Well, I wound up at, it was 4 o'clock. It was like an hour of this, and I finally woke him up, and I said, we have got to go to the ER, because I couldn't breathe. And it just hit, just suddenly, just like that. And so we did that, and we had him. We were trying, like, didn't want to call my daughter, but knowing we've got to call her and tell her. And my grandson was just the sweetest little thing. He stayed. We just waited as long as we could before we called her. And, but anyway, yeah, so it just came on just suddenly.
Wow.
Like
And was that a heart attack, or was it extreme
no,
symptoms that led them to realize that something was up?
And I'm
Wow.
so thankful that they did, because I had had something like that occur before, and they were saying it was asthma, and I did the inhaler, and it got better. And I thought the first thing that he's going to do is check for COVID. Well, he didn't. He didn't even check for COVID. He did the blood test that shows, one of the blood tests that shows, well, they did the test to see if it was a heart attack, but then they did another test that was just out of the sky high. And he said it's congestive heart failure. And, when I talked to my oncologist, he said, I'm sorry to tell you, but that's probably where it came. And I was like, yeah, that's what they told me. It came from the chemo medicine, but that was fine. I had so many years from just taking that medicine that I didn't care. I'm still living, but
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Scary.
yeah,
Really scary. I'm so glad you went in. But of course, I could just see like every woman doing this, like Googling, like instead of just calling 911 or letting our loved ones know that we know
yeah,
we are not well, right? Like I'm guilty of this too. When perhaps maybe we should just,
oh yeah,
let them make that 911 call, or let them know that we actually do need some help, because we never want to be any trouble. But sometimes we do need to get in there, and thank goodness you did. You obviously fell into the right hands with your care team there.
they were great. I tell you, Alabama is just, their medical system is really good.
Ooh, that's good to know.
It is, yeah. But
Yeah.
they were really, because I was really shocked that he ordered the one test, and it's called a BNP, and it was just off. It was like, it should be 300, and it was like 1,800 or something crazy like that. Really,
Wow.
really crazy. But yeah, so
Okay, so now you're back in, and you've been wearing this vest for about 3 to 6 months now.
for 6 months, they said when they initially put it on that I would have to wear it, and it was being monitored, and if it did whatever, then they would know, but they said it would probably be for 3 months, but at the 3 month period, nothing changed. So that's like, let's just go wear it for 6 months. At six
Okay.
months, nothing changed. So they put a defibrillator in there. Instead of having to wear something, they implanted the defibrillator.
Okay.
Yeah. And so they never changed my medicine. It was, the same dosage and everything. And that was in when I had the life vest, and then I got the defibrillator in June and had it, until the next year. The end of that year, I went in the hospital, and I think in December, and then I knew it was less than 45 days. I was back in the hospital because the winters were rough. I mean, I would live, not it was bad. It was bad. But like I said, I did have more good days than bad days, but the winter was it just kicked my butt. And so in February, I was in the hospital, and it was not my regular doctor. It was another on-call doctor for that weekend, I guess. And my husband, because they had tried a new medicine, and they had tried it, that year. It wasn't one of the medicines that I started off with, but it caused me to have several different side effects. It just, I mean, it was really, really causing a lot of side effects. And so my husband told him, he said, she's not going to be able to continue taking this medicine because she's having so many side effects with it. And the provider was not happy. He said something about, well, maybe if you give it more time or something to that nature. And my husband said, she can't take this medicine. She's not going to be able to take this medicine because it has too many side effects. He just basically repeated what he said the first time. It wasn't a confrontation. And I was so glad that my sister wasn't there because it probably would have been a confrontation. And so that, at that moment, because my daughter, this is the younger daughter who lives in Alabama, she wasn't there, but when she heard about that happening, she immediately called my cousin who lives in Birmingham, Alabama, who's a nurse practitioner, and she asked her to please find my mother another cardiologist. And I was discharged from the hospital Tuesday, and on Friday, I was already in another provider's office in Birmingham, Alabama, which is like 4 hours away from where we live. They were so good. They listened to me. They just made me feel emotionally, spiritual, and physically better just by the way they treated me when I was there. They changed my medication. And with me being in healthcare, like I said, just thinking people are taking care of me, and I didn't look up my medication because I didn't want to look up side effects to certain things or anything like that, because I didn't want to get it in my head that this is what's going on. So I never did that, but I started looking up that medication because they upped my dose on the main medication. And it says right there in black and white, you start out at a lower dose and you increase it, but they never did that. And so, like I said, that was in February. I think February, March, April, May. Yeah, and I didn't have to come back until 3 months. When I went back, they decided, well, maybe we can give you a pacemaker. Maybe that'll help. Because my numbers, I felt better, but my numbers were not getting better. And he told me they're not getting any worse, but they're not getting any better.
Okay.
So he set me up with an appointment for an electrophysiologist to see about the pacemaker. And they said that since I had a lot of scar tissue from the mastectomy, that I would have to, they did some type of scan to see if they could even place the pacemaker in there.
Okay.
Yeah, they did the test and it came back, it was okay. They could do the pacemaker. So husband and I went back to the appointment, to the follow, which we were thinking was the follow-up appointment that they were going to tell me when we were going to do the pacemaker, what I needed to do, all this and all that. So I get there, and he says, Miss Parker, King and I have discussed your case with the transplant team at UAB, and we're all in agreement that you need to have a consultation with them. And I'm thinking,
that just took my breath away. I cannot imagine what happened in that moment.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, and that was in June. And so in June, I felt good. And we had been in Alabama at the RV. We had been, my daughter from Tennessee was there. We were having the kids. We were all having a good time. And we were headed back to Tennessee when he called and said, that they needed me to come in. And
yeah,
I just
yeah, I'm in shock. I'm imagining that might be some of what you were feeling. Just like you said, you had just seen them. You just already had another plan in place.
And I didn't feel bad. And I'm like, yeah, and so I asked him, I was like, why can't we just do the pacemaker first? And he kind of did like my husband did. He just repeated what he said. He said, "We think you need to talk to UAB first." And I asked, then this was the question that I asked him because I had a doctor, a family doctor who was an older guy, and he would tell you this. And so I thought, I'm going to ask him this because he would tell you, he would always say, if this was Becky and his wife was Becky, this is what I would tell her to do. And so I asked this doctor because he looked like he was 25. And I said, let me ask you a question. And he said, yeah. I was like, what would you do if I were your mom? What would you tell me to do? And he said, Miss Parker, that's a good question. And with all the little, just the sympathy and compassion in his little face, he said, I would tell you, or if you were my mother or my sister, I would tell you to go and consult with UAB. And I believed him and I trusted him. And I said, oh. And then before we left, he said, if UAB says it's okay to do the pacemaker, we'll do it. He knew I wasn't coming back.
Yeah.
And he knew he wasn't the one to tell me that, but he knew.
Oh, I have chills. Yeah.
I know. And I never saw him again. I reached out to him on my chart and said, thank you for saving my life. But yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, what a role he played in your care and saving your life, literally.
And the timing of everything was just when we think back to it, everything just worked out so perfectly. He said they'll be calling you within a week. And when they called me, it was crazy because I went to my sister-in-law's house to pick up something I thought she had, and she didn't have it. My other sister-in-law had it, so I went to her house to pick it up, and she was talking to me, and she was saying, and she knew what was going on. She said, "Don't miss your chance. You need to do what you need to do." My husband was having surgery that Friday, and this was Wednesday when I went to talk to her. He was having surgery that Friday. Well, while I was down there talking to her, they were calling me saying, "Hey, we've had a cancellation. Can you come in tomorrow?" Which was Thursday. And I said yes. And it was so crazy because we were just talking about, she said, you need to go when you can go. And I had already go with us to the appointment, which was in Memphis. It was, a few hours, an hour away. And she was already planning on going anyway. So when they called and said I could come the next day, I grabbed up my bags. I packed them, went to my sister's house in Memphis. And this is me driving to my sister's house in Memphis, not feeling anything, just feeling normal.
Yeah.
And when we got to UAB, even before we got there, the person who called me for my appointment, she was the nicest person. She was professional, just different from anything that I've ever experienced in healthcare. And then when we got there, we were using maps. We'd never been there before. And maps had us, had me getting out at the back door, which we didn't realize it, while she went to the parking garage to park the car. And so when I first stepped in, the two nurses were there, and they were like, do you need some help? Do you know where to go? Because I was in a totally different area that I didn't need to be in. But they took me to where I needed to go, which was to have an EKG was the first thing I had to have, because I had to have all these tests before I saw the doctor. So they took me to EKG, and I was sitting out in the waiting room by the time my sister parked her car and came back. And so we went to the next appointment and the next appointment, and people were so nice. They were so professional. People in the hallway were speaking to you, and I just felt so good. And everything was going smoothly. There were no hiccups. I didn't have to wait long to this one place and go to that one place. And I didn't see the doctor until 1:00. Well, by that time, my cousin had walked over there. She didn't work at UAB at that time, but she was able to walk there and come and be in the room with me when we saw the doctor, which was great. So I had the support, and we were just, just laughing and having a good time. And then it didn't take him long to come in. When he came in, I introduced him. He introduced himself. I introduced him to my sister and my cousin, and he said, "Miss Parker, we've looked at your results from Alabama Cardiovascular. We looked at all the tests that you've had done today. We need to admit you to the hospital and fix what's going on now. While you're here, we need to evaluate you for a heart transplant. And you may not get to go home until you get a heart. And so, all in just a few seconds. Just a few seconds.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, the first thing that I thought, because, I knew that I was coming there for a consultation. But I didn't feel bad, and I didn't think that it was going to happen.
Yeah, you think, right, again, you think this is a consultation, like, oh, we'll discuss this maybe down the road.
Yeah.
I'm going to go have this pacemaker first and give that a try, or all kinds of other scenarios.
Yeah, but that was not anywhere in my thought process.
Especially since you weren't feeling bad.
Since I wasn't feeling bad, and like I said, I had driven an hour the night before because we spent the night with my cousin to get there on Wednesday night to be able to be there on Thursday. And the whole plan was, this is perfect because I'm picking her up in Memphis. My husband's having his surgery on Friday. We'll leave UAB on Thursday, go straight to Memphis, spend the night with her, and meet them at the hospital on Friday for his surgery. That didn't happen. And so my sister and my cousin, they started calling people. They stepped out of the room, started calling people, and I can know that the doctor just read my face because he told me with care and compassion. He said, if you need to go home, I'll let you go home for 3 days. No, he just said, if you want to go home, I'll let you go home for 3 days on medication and you can come back. And I immediately said no. I said, because I did not want to leave that. I was already comfortable in that place. I was already,
Yeah.
I do not want to go back to what I came from. I want to stay here and get better because I had a fear of doing something that would kill me.
Yeah.
So
yeah, at that point, I think that was absolutely the right call. But you could tell he was probably just wanting to give you some time to absorb the information.
Which was very, very nice of him. And I had, I think, 4 or 5 doctors, and they were all so good. And he became my best friend. I love him.
Oh, I love hearing that.
I said, this is the one that kidnapped me. But that experience, it was all great. Every person that worked at that facility they were just professional and nice and kind and compassionate. It was like nothing that I've ever experienced. And it continues that way.
And I just want to point out, this was very recently.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you are not that far out from this.
No, and it's crazy because time is just really going by. I mean, in the first year, I had to go once a week. No, the first few weeks after. I had to stay in Alabama for 6 weeks. I only stayed in the hospital for 2 weeks after my surgery, but I had to stay in Alabama because I live so far away. They didn't want me to, even to get on the list, I had to be within 4 hours of the hospital. And then after I had the surgery, I had to be 30 minutes out from the hospital. And so they had, and since my cousin was there, because the transplant coordinator came in and she talked to us about all these things, and I was admitted to the hospital, but one of the things that we talked about was being for 30 minutes from the hospital. And they said, if I got the transplant, that I would be able to stay with her, but she lives in a smaller suburb, not in Birmingham. She was like 36 miles out, but they had said that, yes, I could stay with her. But we were able to get a 2-bedroom apartment that was a nonprofit organization owned that apartment, and they let people from UAB stay there for $10 a week.
Wow, that's incredible.
And it was like probably 5 minutes from the hospital. Really nice place. And
what a gift.
That was a very, very special gift, and I would love to do that for somebody.
Oh my gosh, and be able to have family with you.
Yeah, they were like, we've got to get a 2-bedroom, because there was times that my husband had to leave to go check on his follow-up.
Yeah, he was going through his own
Yeah.
issues. Yeah.
They were, my sister would come and stay with me. And so they, wanted to have an extra bedroom for her when she came, if she had to come, or my daughter, whoever was going to come to help.
Yeah.
But that was a blessing. There were so many blessings. There was just so many blessings.
Isn't that really does make all the difference, right? Just to be able to have the family with you, feel supported. You absolutely landed in the right hands when all this happened, and having that second doctor, being able to have your husband advocate for you in that moment, just really put you on the track to really be right where you needed to be in every moment. Which is, when you're going through something this substantial and scary, it's nice to be able to track that and see how some of these things lined up in a truly remarkable way, actually.
Yes, very providence of God through all of it. And I did have so much support, and I got a huge box that was from like the ladies at the church, and even people who didn't go to the church had things in there. I'm like, how does she know about this? But they knew what was going on, even though they weren't a member of my church. They knew me, and there were people that were praying for me that were not even, that I had no idea was. My sister lives in Memphis, and she went to a church to visit, and she saw my name on their prayer list, and she was like, "How do you know my sister?" So,
man,
it was the power of prayer is something else. But yeah,
wow,
I made it through, and I'm just so thankful to be alive. I'm so grateful for my organ donor, for the family. My heart came from Houston, but I've reached out to my donor family, and you go through that through Legacy of Life, and it's up to them whether they want to contact you or not. And I've reached out a few times, but they haven't, and that's fine. I did attend in July I got my heart in July, and the following year, Birmingham was hosting the Transplant Games of America, which I never heard. I knew nothing about the transplant.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And unfortunately, there's some really great things happening there that we're not aware of until we're made aware of.
But yeah, I did that. I volunteered for 3 different days. Legacy of Hope had their booth there, so I did that 2 days. I volunteered in another area. I ran was supposed to be the 100, but their track was a 60 meter. So I ran the 60 meter, and I ran the 200 meter, and got silver in both of those. And that was the year after. My doctor told me, he's like, one of them, he said, "We're hosting the Transplant Games. You have a year to train." So,
oh my gosh.
Because that right before I was, not right before, but before I was diagnosed in 2021, I did the Senior Games, Senior Olympics for Tennessee in June of that year. And
wow.
in November here, I'm in congestive heart failure. And so he knew that was one of my goals, was to be able to go back to the Senior Games, because I actually started the Senior Games when I turned 50, because I was in my 40s when I had breast cancer. But as soon as I turned 50, I started the Senior Games. I didn't do every year, but I did them about 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
But yeah.
That's truly incredible. I think the last thing on my mind would be, how do I go compete in anything that big, right? And that it was your doctor that was like, "Oh, you've got a year to train."
Yeah, and actually because I asked them, because I was going to the doctor, to the clinic a couple of times a week before I got to go home. And so I asked him if I could do, because we were in Alabama where my daughter lives, for Thanksgiving that year. And they had a 5K. And I was like, wouldn't it be great for me just to do that 5K, wear my Donate Life shirt, and advocate that way? And so I asked my doctor if it was okay, and they said yes. And I did it. And my family was there. My daughter and her husband and son that had the Donate Life shirts on. We made one for because he was just 2, I think then. So we made a little
Mm,
shirt for him.
mm.
And my husband were there, and we just, I did that. And then 4 months later, we had a big girls trip. We went to Perito Key, and they had a 5K. So I was like, hey, we can go here for my birthday, and we can do this 5K. And my youngest daughter, immediately said, those of us who won't be running will be your cheerleaders. So
Yes, I would be one of those. I'd be a real good hype girl on the sideline.
yeah, so I enjoy doing that, but I do want to start speaking more to get the word
Yeah,
out a little bit more because, advocating
yeah.
for yourself and just knowing that, um, I don't know, that,
Yeah, I'm curious about that. I mean, your transition from patient to advocate, especially with your experience in healthcare,
mhm.
but I don't think you have to be in healthcare to, you
No,
know,
exactly.
understand how to advocate. So I'm just curious what you have to share about that, about being a good advocate for yourself.
One of the things is let's go over my what happened to me and what I can bring to someone else. So the first advocacy I did. Before I start with the advocacy, I'll tell you, don't wait for 3 months to have your physical. Have your physicals every year, your mammograms
Yeah.
every year, and make the appointment. The mammograms, it was funny because I would have mine in September, and then, they would send you the card for you to call for your appointment. Well, then it got to be when I call in September, it's 3 months before they can get to my. So it's like,
Right.
make your appointment 3 months ahead of time because you're probably going to have to wait 3 months. You're going to be off schedule.
That's true.
Yeah. But when I received the diagnosis, or before I received the diagnosis, before I went and had my physical, I did ask the doctor. I asked the doctor if I could wait to have the diagnostic mammogram. I was advocating for myself. It's like I don't want to do it now because this is a once in a lifetime thing that my daughter's doing. I want to be there, and so I did that. That's advocating for yourself. Just asking the questions. Can you put it off until Thursday? And then another question, or not even a question, but just my husband saying she can't take the medication and just sticking
Hmm.
to it. It's like she can't take the medications because of the side effects. And we don't need to be, not saying that they were trying to bully me and just keep taking it and maybe it'll get better. Just, your body more than anybody. And you know when something's wrong. And so don't let anybody tell you to do something if you feel like it's wrong. I'm not trying to tell you don't take your meds, don't do anything. I'm not giving medical advice, but I'm just telling you to stand up for yourself. And standing up
Yeah.
for yourself doesn't have to be confrontation. It doesn't have to be like when I asked the surgeon, can we do a frozen section? I didn't go in there
Hmm.
saying, I work in the lab, I know you can do this, you need to do this. I asked him if he could do the frozen section, and he said yes.
Mm.
And then with my daughter, when we decided to get another cardiologist, we just did. We went to that doctor, and I went into my chart and I canceled the appointments that I had with the doctor that I was leaving. I didn't tell him. I just left. I canceled my appointments. And they were
Mm.
calling me and asking me, and I was like, but
Yeah. You knew there was something else going on.
yeah. So, but to me, advocacy means just clarity, courage, and love. Just being able to stand up for yourself, for your loved ones, and just letting the provider know that this is your body, this is their body, and you're not going to let them dictate what happens to it. And a lot of times they don't even tell you what they're doing, they just start doing stuff. And I've heard horror stories of people saying, they were going to do a procedure, and then it wound up being like a hysterectomy, you know. And
Yeah. Yeah,
so
I think it's important to just like pause and ask some questions like you said. I think it's okay to pause and be curious and ask what's happening and why.
and a lot of
And there's
times
a way to do that
that's
without being super confrontational, but you do deserve to know what's happening and why.
exactly. And a lot of times I think the reason we don't ask questions is because by the time the doctor gets to you, you're in the waiting room for 45 minutes. By the time he gets to you, you're ready to go home. And
Mm-hmm,
I would
mm-hmm.
suggest before you go to your appointment, make a list of questions that you can ask, that you need to ask, or just conversations that you need to have. And one of the things I've thought about is that when we do make an appointment, they're so many weeks away. Is to review. There may have been another, something else that's going on with you in those 6 weeks. So make sure they're reviewing what's going on with you the day that you're there and why did you come to see the doctor. But just some of those things that are not hard to do, but just getting used to doing them.
Yeah. And in the moment, it can just slip away from you so easily, which is why I think it's so important to have somebody with you. And I always give that advice. And more often than not, what I hear back from especially women is, but it's no big deal. I'm just going in for X, Y, and Z, right? It's just going to be a simple procedure. It's just going to be that. And, I think you and I probably come at it with like, yeah, and let's just make sure that you're well supported and that there's somebody there to lend voice to some of your concerns and validate. And sometimes it gives you just a little bit more confidence to ask those questions because it's so easy when they're just in the routine of the appointment to be, just going through the check boxes and just being that person to go, okay, wait, but I have a question. I'd like to know more about this.
Yes. And also, if ask them, can you put it in writing? Because the words that they're saying, you may not understand what they're saying if nobody's there with you that can help. It's like, can you just put that in writing? And even with me, with a diagnosis that I've never heard before, it's like, let's put it in writing.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that. Yeah, that is a really, really good point. Before we go, Jennifer, what would you love for listeners to do after hearing your story?
And my first thing is just advocating for yourself, standing up for yourself, for your loved ones, for the people you care about, just being able to do that. The second thing is, if you can, I would please ask that you would register to be an organ donor. There are so many ways you could save people. It's not just one. They can use your tissue, your eyes. I have my daughter, either this year or like last year, she had a friend that passed away and his organs were donated. There were, I think, 6 people that benefited from just that one donation. And I think it's great if we have the opportunity to do that. It's not, and I will tell you, be honest with you, that I had always wanted to be an organ donor, but I never did it until I received my heart. I would donate blood, and I got to where I didn't do that because my veins are super small. They can't use my left arm, and it was like they would just give up and say, we just can't do it. You can't get this big in your little veins for a whole unit of blood. But I never did until after I received my heart, and there are people that have told me that they have donated because of what I went through. One of my real close friends, she did. I know for sure because she told me, and I know my family has. But it's just so important, and I just thankful every day that I'm still here, and that it's from somebody who didn't know me, and it's
What a
just
sacred gift,
is
right? And
sacred.
I can tell by listening to you talk about it that you are deeply connected to the family and, the heart that beats within your chest now, and just the sacredness of that.
It is it's so special. It's just so special. But
What would you say, I'm curious, to somebody considering organ donation, or even to loved ones that maybe have had a loved one that said that they wanted to donate, right?
I would just tell them
As a recipient of
yeah,
that.
to do it, because anyone can donate. A lot of people think if they're sick, if they have this disease, if they have that disease, that could possibly still donate. They could possibly still use something, some organ from them. Yeah. Even it doesn't, I know one lady that I talked to, she said her father was 80 something years old and he was an organ donor and he was able to save, this many people or whatever. And he had health problems, but it doesn't matter because, and I think with technology the way it is today, we just let them decide what they can use and what they can't use because they'll know use and what they can't use. But it's because I, just not even thinking that, one person could save so many people. Just one person can give
It's remarkable.
People or sight.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Truly remarkable. What a journey, and so many turning points for you that really led you to being here and being able to do the work that you do, be a vibrant part of your family and community, and also just, sharing your story on a bigger scale and a bigger stage to really advocate for these things for the rest of us, and, as a benefactor of some of the gifts that you received. And I really just am grateful for you doing this and bringing more awareness to it with so much compassion and courage. And yeah, I just think your experience is so worth sharing. And so I really hope that anybody listening to it feels nourished by it. I hope you feel inspired by it and would love to have you share this story. Jennifer, can you tell us where people can find you or follow you? I'll leave links in the show notes so people can continue to learn from you and see what you are up to and perhaps even cheer you on.
Okay. My LinkedIn I'm on LinkedIn and I'll send that to you. My email is japarkerspeaks@gmail.com. If you want to look at some pretty flowers, I'm still on Instagram.
Yes.
And it's southernsparkleflorals.com. And like I said, I'm very proud of that. My daughter started her business and I told her, it's like, you need to do this, you're good at it. And I found a class for her to take because I'm all about education. If you want to do something, you need to be educated. And she said, and so I said, I found this class for you, if you want to take it, I'll pay for it. So she counter offered and said, if you go with me, I'll pay mine.
The counter offer sounds like my daughter's.
Yeah, she's the dependent one. So
I love that. I love it.
I'm thankful that I was able to have that business and to do that, and I love it. And I think I have a wedding in September who's my best friends and it's her daughter, and I for sure are gonna do the flowers for that. Yeah, SouthernSparkleFlorals.com. And you won't recognize me because the picture, the last post is me glammed up, thanking everybody for their support during my transplant, but it's me.
I love that. Oh, that's amazing. Well, you look remarkable today. I don't have that picture to compare anything to, and the sweater and the jewelry, like you're just magnificent. And yeah, I'm just so grateful for you being here today. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your wisdom with us and all the work that you're doing. Happy to announce that you are actually on our advisory board for the Clear Pathways program. And so I know you're going to be a part of advocacy in so many ways. And this is just really the beginning for us getting to know you. And there's so much more to come. So thank you for blessing us with your presence today.
Fun. I appreciate it. I was nervous, but it's been fun.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. I'm really grateful to hear that.